This is 2017's Gerald's Game. Warning, spoilers ahead. We open up to Jessie packing as she prepares for a trip, and she puts on her hat as a finishing touch. Gerald packs up his bag rather modestly. That is, until he packs 2 sets of handcuffs. The 2 of them hit the road, and Jessie turns on the radio to take in the scenery. While she does that, Gerald tries to get a little physical with her, but she puts an end to that. Gerald swears that this trip will be a good thing for them, but Jessie doesn't seem too sold on the idea. Gerald almost hits a dog in the middle of the road, but Jessie gets his attention just in time. Eventually, they make it to their destination, and Gerald immediately has to accept a work call. Jessie decides to check out the water in the backyard, and she seems to get a sense of welcoming from the view. Okay, what vacation place stocks the fridge with prime choice meat and all sorts of food? And who is giving that $200 piece of meat to a stray? At least, she's hoping to. While Jessie tries to call for the stray, Gerald takes a nice little blue pill in the room. Outside, the stray finally pops up, but he quickly retreats when Gerald pops up. Gerald brings Jessie inside to start setting the mood, but Jessie notices that they didn't shut the door on the way in. I don't care how rich you are or how safe of an area you're in. You lock your doors at all times. Jessie heads to the bedroom after getting into something more comfy. Eventually, Gerald comes in and he has his handcuffs ready for her. Jessie even admits that she was expecting the fluffy ones, but he tells her that he didn't want anything that would break too easily if they got too hard. Better yet, the bedposts are real wood. There's no breaking that. Uh-oh, I see where this is going. Just when Jessie gets ready for the occasion, Gerald goes to take yet another little blue pill. He starts role-playing really hard, but Jessie really doesn't like the direction that this is going in. She quickly makes Gerald stop, and after he blames her for all of this, she points out that he hasn't touched her in such a long time anyways. But now, Gerald doesn't think that he wants to uncuff her. He tries to do it sweet this time, but Jessie still isn't wanting it and bites him on the lip. The message finally sinks in with Gerald, and he starts remembering the times when they were happy. And just like that, Gerald has a little heart attack and falls right on top of Jessie. If that's not traumatizing, I don't know what would be. Jessie pushes Gerald off the bed with her feet, and she starts freaking out when she realizes what happened. She calls out his name and tries to get the cuffs off the posts, but none of it works. Suddenly, Jessie notices that Gerald suffered a blow to his head, and he's not going to be waking up. The day goes by, and Jessie gets a bit of hope when she hears something or someone rustling in the trees outside her window. Then, she hears the front door swing open, and soon, the stray dog appears in their room. Apparently, that $200 portion of meat wasn't enough for this dog because he's ready to eat Gerald right there on the bedroom floor. The dog takes one sliver of Gerald before Jessie is able to throw a book at the dog, but the dog sits right there and eats it in front of her. Ah! The spirit of Gerald pops up and starts taunting Jessie. Gerald really starts giving Jessie a huge guilt trip, and Jessie starts to realize that she's losing her mind. Gerald blames Jessie for feeding the dog, for having all these problems, and for wasting so much time when she should have been trying to get out. After getting her pep talk from 2 or 3 Geralds, she slips her hand out of the one cuff and she breaks the bedpost on the other side. When she walks over to see that she made it out, she finds out that she never actually got out. It's just her other psyche who is trying to convince Jessie that she just needs to be stronger to save herself. This part of her psyche brings up that there was another man who put her in handcuffs way before Gerald ever got the chance to. Well, my interest is definitely piqued. Finally, this woman starts using her feet to reach something. It doesn't work, but at least she's thinking outside the box. The Jessie side of her delusions points out that since she can't get off the bed, she has to live long enough for someone to find her chained to the bed. A little later, Gerald talks about how he tried to hide his Viagra from her when he first took it, and he talks about the first time that he didn't really need it anymore. Apparently, he had gotten really physical with her by choking her, and Jessie began to wonder who she had married. Head Jessie pops up, and she gives Jessie a reminder that Gerald actually put a glass of water right above her head when he got into bed, and she tries to move the shelf so that she can grab the cup off one end. When she goes to drink it, though, she can't quite reach her mouth. So Head Jessie has her put it right back on the shelf where she knows she can reach it. Oh, hey! Doggo is ready for another bite, and by the time Jessie finally gets out, there won't be much of Gerald left. As Jessie starts remembering more of what happened when they got into bed, she remembers that there's a tag from her slip on the shelf too. She grabs it and folds it up into a makeshift straw, and she goes back for the water. After taking a few sips, head Jessie reminds her that she's going to need more later, and Jessie puts the cup and straw back up on the shelf. Now what? She needs more than water. She's going to need to sleep, eat, and do bathroom stuff. If she does all that enough, the dog won't want to be around her anymore. Jessie falls asleep, and a little later, the dog senses something coming their way. The dog gets up and rushes out of the house, and Jessie wakes up to hear it barking outside. Suddenly, the dog stops barking, and Jessie thinks that she sees someone in the corner. The being slowly creeps out of the shadow, only to hover over the bed. This is the Moonlight Man, and he shows Jessie his bag of trinkets. Jessie starts to think that he's not really real, and she closes her eyes to take a few deep breaths. Head Gerald pops up again to taunt Jessie about being alone in the dark, and he tells her that she just might not be safe anymore. He starts talking about people simply dying of fear, and he thinks that this might be what death looks like. That would be terrifying. To die from fear would be a horrible way to go. Jessie ends up falling asleep again. Her dream is a memory of herself as a child as she moves into her new house with her dad, mom, sister, and brother. Her father, Tom, leads Jessie's siblings out onto the boat. But when Jessie tells her mother that she's scared of being on the lake, her mother tells Tom that Jessie is nothing but a nuisance. Tom agrees to stay behind on shore so that Jessie doesn't have to be out on the boat, and he starts complimenting Jessie on how grown she looks in her new dress. Tom is definitely a creep, and I can see why Jessie would have intimacy problems when she's older. He really tries hard to get Jessie up on his lap. Ugh, she's 12! Jessie starts to feel a little guilty, and she sits on Tom's lap as she tells her dad that she loves him. The two of them sit there and watch the eclipse happen, but Tom has his sights on Jessie instead. Jessie can feel Tom doing something behind her, and suddenly she wakes up in her bed still handcuffed. Her hands have no circulation, and she's cramping up in her legs too. Head Jessie tells her that she has to get her blood flowing, and soon Jessie starts to feel a little better. Jessie gets a little bit more water and sets it up on the shelf again before turning her attention to the flies on the end of the bed. Suddenly, Gerald tells Jessie that she never told him about that time with Tom, and he completely understands why things didn't work out intimately. It turns out Gerald was an older man like Tom, he was a lawyer like Tom, they both objectified her, and both had drinking problems. That's a bad dynamic, but it definitely happens. Head Jessie is over here spitting facts about how Jessie did nothing about anything, but Jessie is still trying to justify everything and blames everything but Tom. It gets worse though. Jessie tells Gerald about how Tom had a bad dream later that same night, and Head Jessie tells her that the worst thing came later that night. As Jessie goes over the really odd dream, Gerald looks more and more confused. It turns out that Jessie has been repressing a lot of bad memories, but Gerald is trying to get into Jessie's mind. He points out that there's a bloody footprint on the floor, and he thinks that it was death from the night before. Jessie wants to close her eyes and count to 10, but Head Jessie wants her to stay awake. Jessie feels calmer as she counts down, but when she opens her eyes, she's back in her memory. Young Jessie lays out her sundress on her bed, and Tom comes in to check on her. Get away, creepy daddy! What the hell? He's really trying to apologize and justify everything with her alone in the bedroom? Jessie sits next to him on the bed to listen to his apology, and he tells her that they should tell her mom about the whole situation. Then he mentions it'll just make more tension between the two of them, and by the time he's done giving her his guilt trip, Jessie really doesn't want to tell anyone about what's happened. Tom acts surprised and worried, and he says that Jessie can't keep a secret. Naturally, this makes Jessie want to commit to keeping the secret, and she swears that she'll never tell a soul. This guy is a masterclass manipulator, and he's really working a number on the 12-year-old Jessie. By the time he's done with her, Jessie is the one begging him not to tell her mom. How does that happen? In the end, Tom acts like this was all Jessie's idea, and he promises to keep her secret. Ugh, the transfer into him licking her feet, into the dog licking her feet, yuck! Doggo bites Jessie's leg before he goes to get another bite out of Gerald, and Gerald tells Jessie that the dog will definitely try again since she's getting weaker and weaker. Gerald then points out that no one will really worry about Jessie disappearing for a few weeks since she never let anyone into her life, but he has people and professionals who will be looking for him in a few days. Gerald tells Jessie about how he thinks the caretaker will be the one to discover them, and he thinks that Jessie will have an expression of horror frozen on her face as she sees death coming for her. Jessie slowly loses a little more of her sanity as she sings herself to sleep again, and this time she sees the eclipse. Grown Jessie is standing on the shore, looking at the eclipse before walking into her childhood room to find young Jessie handcuffed. Jesse apologizes to her younger self, but young Jesse just wants her to remember everything that happened. Young Jesse tells her that she's had everything she needs to survive from the very beginning, and with that statement, Jesse remembers the dinner after her talk with Tom. At dinner, Jesse is so stressed that she squeezes her glass too hard and she cuts her hand. Tom takes her to the bathroom to take care of her. At least Jesse is remembering that glass can cut someone. After weighing her options, she thinks that she'll be able to break her water glass, cut her hand, and slip out of the handcuffs. After talking to her head guests, she decides to go through with her plan, and she breaks her water glass. We're going to skip right through this part. Just know that her plan works, but she doesn't have much skin left on her hand. Jesse is able to get the key to the handcuffs from the counter in the bathroom, and after setting herself free, she stumbles to the sink to drink as much water as her body can stand. She grabs pads out of the bathroom drawer to help save whatever she can of her hand, but when she goes to get the car keys from the dresser, she passes out. She doesn't wake up until later that night, and she wakes up to Doggo trying to eat her hand. She's still strong enough to get the dog off of her, and she gets to the car keys. Suddenly, the dog starts whining at something in the hallway, and it runs into the bathroom to hide. Jesse grabs the keys and slowly makes her way to the hall to find the Moonlight Man at the other end, waiting for her. Jesse walks right up to him, hands her wedding ring as a trinket, and she goes on her way to the car. As she goes to pull out, she sees Gerald standing there one more time, and she goes on her way. As she drives a bit down the road, she starts passing out and running off the road, and suddenly, she's driving in her memory toward the eclipse. Oh God, Midnight Man is in her back seat! The Midnight Man whispers one singular word in her ear, and she ends up crashing into a tree. The crash is enough to alert some nearby neighbors, and they come out to investigate. Jesse ends up passing out before they can get to her. Next we see, Jesse is okay, and she's preparing to write a letter about the secrets that she's been keeping. Everything seemed to go back to normal since she made it out, but Jesse admits that every night, she sees the Midnight Man in her room. According to the police, no one ever found her wedding ring that she gave the Midnight Man, and Jesse is unsure of what to make of that. Jesse took the insurance money and created a foundation to help boys and girls who had been through trauma like she had as a child. And 6 months later, she found a newspaper clipping about the man she'd seen as the Midnight Man. Ugh! Does that mean he was really there licking her feet that one night? It turns out that the Midnight Man had killed over a dozen people in a few years, and Jesse is lucky that she was spared. Jesse writes the rest of her letter to her younger self, and she hopes to bring the sun back to young Jesse. The next day, Jesse goes to court to see the verdict on the Midnight Man, and she looks the man in the face. When the man sees her, he recognizes her immediately, and Jesse finds her peace before walking away. Then, the credits roll. This was a great thriller, and I'm glad I finally sat down to watch it. Honestly, I thought that she would still be in the bed at the end too, but nope, happy ending, or at least as happy as it could be. Give it a shot. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more like this one. Comment what you think I should watch next, and I'll see you in the next video.